Sacred Space, 1984 lecture by Robert L. Moore. Presently, there is a revolution in the understanding of sacred space. The quest for regenerative liminal space usually occurs during some form of life transition. Everyone has some personal knowledge of this quest. So I urge the readers to reflect on their own experiences of sacred space as they read this material. When people act crazy by conventional standards, they are often searching for some kind of extraordinary space that will allow them to leave an old phase of life behind and experience initiation into an entirely new phase. Age-old human existential issues bring with them a yearning to locate and enter a sacred temple where the issues can be addressed, where the constructive reorientation can safely occur, and where the behavior of self and others can once again begin to regenerate and make sense. Phases. In phase one, ordinary, everyday consciousness is challenged as the individual's life world grows less viable and morbid. In the sacred space of phase two, however, the ordinary consciousness is transcended as the individual's everyday life world is dismantled and deconstructed. Sounds familiar? Phase three then completes the process of initiation as the ordinary everyday consciousness is reconstituted and the individual's life world reintegrated and renewed. Son of a bitch. People experience this kind of radical change in their sacred geography anytime they have to cope with a significant crisis or loss in their lives. Some individuals, unfortunately, never seem to finish with their grief, and the world never congeals again satisfactorily for them. Instead, they remain in a state of chronic liminality, unable to move on to the third phase and return back to ordinary life. A person who does not understand sacred space or have access to a knowledgeable guide can easily get lost in the labyrinth of transformative space. It is not good to remain indefinitely in the transitional world of sacred space because profane, mundane space is where we ordinarily must live. Most of our lives are lived out of Eden, in quotations. Entering sacred space is always an ordeal or trial, Holmes. An ordeal or trial. Whether done voluntarily, or involuntarily. However, according to Jordan Peterson and Iliad, I think is who he quoted from, it matters if it's voluntarily or involuntarily. I digress. One must undergo rituals of degradation and humiliation at the threshold and submit before crossing over into the transitional sacred space. Submission is symbolized culturally in numerous ways. Fraternity hazing, for example, is a vestige of this ancient process and has primordial meaning. Entering the initiation process requires humility. Hinduism has a saying that a temple cannot be found with unbent knee or unbowed head. You cannot desecrate the real temple. Rituals of degradation symbolize the spirit of resignation and surrender required to enter sacred space. It is not accessible otherwise. Tragedy or catastrophe sometimes forces people into these transitions. They get slapped around by life experience so traumatic that humility is their only recourse. It collapses their prized narcissism. This happens a great deal when people are destabilized or decompensated into the quest for initiation and transformation. Willed submission takes place, and there is controlled regression in service of the ego, rather than circumstances rather forcing the course of events. The person makes a decision to enter analyses or spiritual direction. Even here, however, the spirit of submission is a common theme. We cannot overemphasize the importance of Iliada's notion of the heterogeneity of space for understanding initiation in both personal and social transformation. This key idea of two separate and distinct kinds of space in human life underlies everything else in his work. It goes on. Profane space. Profane space differs from sacred space in that it has no fixed point or center from which to gain orientation. Profane space has no axis mundi, no cosmic tree or pillar leading to the heavens. This is the experience of modernity. People unable to locate a center. Profane space allows no direct contact with the power that enables renewal and regeneration to occur. Inability to locate the center corresponds to an inability to find the source of power necessary for regeneration. Symbolically, this is the inability to find one's umbilical cord or the mother's breast. Iliad thinks sacred space was evoked and became manifest through telling the stories of ancestors. In these narratives, the gods appeared, primordial prototypes were imitated, and what Jungians call the archetypes were present. Continuing. Nonetheless, Iliad believed that a homogeneous view of space had radically impoverished modern industrial culture. He believed modernity underwent such a fundamental fall that people today are shut off from any real experience of regenerative space. Though Iliad understood how the heterogeneity of space relates to regeneration in human experience, he gave no insight on how to locate sacred space in contemporary culture or how it might function in the modern world. Hence, Promethean Men's Group and other sacred spaces coming up. So I agree that it is difficult for modern persons to locate sacred space, and it is also difficult to find knowledgeable elders to steward it. Indeed, based on my research, without the wisdom of the ritual elders, space would have appeared homogeneous even in pre-modern cultures. These elders served as diviners, and they knew how to look for the signs of regeneration, regenerative space. I would agree the need for a true elder has returned. It goes on. In summary, Mircea Eliade is, in my view, the greatest genius in the field of the history of religions, and modern scholarship is deeply indebted to him for introducing the concept of sacred space into its discourse. Unfortunately, his work is badly misunderstood and its full importance not yet widely recognized. People who only think of Iliad as an antiquarian of religion still have not realized the wealth of his material for understanding and renewing culture and for helping human beings value and cherish the various cultural traditions. Part one of The Archetype of Initiation, lectures by Robert Elmore. Thanks for listening.